WCNC TV Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide and the tough questions get asked and answered.
Happy Sunday, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on Flashpoint. I'm Ben Thompson. Joining me today, Charlotte Mayor Pro Tem Julie Eiselt, Tammy Harris, the founder and executive director of the Ursus Institute. It's a group that combats human trafficking. And then as well, John Powell, who is running to be chairman of the Mecklenburg County Republican Party. Thank you all three for joining us on this Sunday morning. All right, first up, the Women's March held this weekend here in Charlotte. And out of transparency, we're taping this Friday morning, so this is video from last year's march, we need to say. However, hundreds of women expecting to march for civil rights, workers' rights, immigrant rights, and more. This year, though, some changes to the third annual march. The march was moved back a week to avoid the corresponding MLK parade weekend last weekend. The name also changed the Women's United March to make it feel a bit more inclusive.
We listened to the community, which basically they told us, you know, there's too many white women and there's not a lot of people of color represented in the march.
To add diversity, organizers teamed up with the Charlotte chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. Mayor Pro Tem Eiselt, I know you're scheduled to speak. Why was it important for you to make an appearance here from what, at least on a national level, has gotten a bit of controversy?
Well, full disclosure, as Mayor Pro Tem, I'm stepping in for the mayor who was not able to attend, which is usually what I do. So,
what do you think is important about a march like this?
Well, it just brings awareness to women's issues, and I think I think the group here has tried really hard to learn from mistakes in the past that maybe they weren't aware of as white women, and reach out and work with the Coalition of 100 Black Women, work with Hispanic groups. I'm not on the organizing side, but it was important to them to separate themselves from what was happening in New York with that group. And so that's why they rebranded it. Do
you feel like some of these marches have become too political?
There's a lot of political involvement. I mean, that's the environment that we live in right now, Ben. But what you've got to give people the chance to voice their opinions. It doesn't matter what side of the coin they're on. They need to be heard. Everybody needs to be heard. So whether you want to call it political or just freedom of speech, we need to have that freedom of speech. So I think it's very important.
You think they're too political at this point?
Well, I mean, I agree with the freedom of speech, but for me and my work that I do in anti-trafficking, I have to say the amount of women that are behind this really saddens me.
Why is that? It's interesting you say that.
So, I mean, I know that it's supposed to cover a whole array of different aspects, right? Not just reproductive health. But for someone who works anti-trafficking, the issue of forced abortions is prevalent. So it saddens me that so many women are out there marching for something, and I feel like they don't know what they're standing for.
You feel like there should be more diversity in thought as well?
I believe that they should be addressing all of the issues and who's impacted by the choices that are being made.
I don't know that this is a reproductive rights march. I think this is about, I know what I'm talking about is gender representation in the boardroom, gender representation in corporations. The statistics show that especially women of color who graduate from college and enter the workforce, by the time you get to the executive levels, those numbers have significantly decreased, and we need to pay more attention to that because there needs to be better representation, especially with issues that affect men and women.
Long way away from getting equal representation in the boardroom and in legislatures across the country, really. Talking about legislatures across the country, let's talk about Capitol Hill. On Friday, federal workers missed that second paycheck. Take a look at these numbers. On average, furloughed workers are now owed $7,000 for lost wages. In total, the 833,000 workers are now owed about $6 billion. About 74% of the households with a furloughed worker are homeowners. So, of course, a lot of those homeowners looking at a mortgage coming up this upcoming week, and they're not sure how they're going to pay for it. And then 14%, the last number, 14% of those households have kids under 5. All right, what do you think should be done here? Should the president stand his ground and continue down this road, or does somebody have to blink?
I think everybody has to blink. I think it's a matter of collaboration. I don't like to use the word, confrontation. I think we can sit down and look what happened on the Senate floor yesterday. Both bills from the Democratic side and the Republican side were not passed. But now we've got Schumer and we've got our Republican leader Mitch McConnell, who are sitting down together privately trying to hash this thing out. We've got to get our government back open. We have to. I have a brother-in-law who's a captain of the Coast Guard. He's directly affected. There's a lot of people that are directly affected with this. So something has to be remedied now.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, I agree. I think they both have to come to the table and everyone has to kind of put their big boy pants on and start acting like adults. But the matter of the fact is, I mean, Trump has made things better for the Dreamers, and so, you know, I think we should be able to move forward and get some resolve.
I agree. Why I like local politics, and I think everybody should start at the local level, is we have to work together. You know, you don't, if you saw our tiny hall on the 15th floor, as John has, you know, we're bumping into each other. You don't get to just go to your corner and dig in deep and just not move.
As the saying goes, this applies to many different categories. It's much easier to hit far away than it is up close to lionize people. All right, the other big story was sort of a lightning rod story this week. Students returned to Covington Catholic High School up in Kentucky after threats and outrage as part of a national debate. Threats against the school have come after videos involving students and a Native American in D.C. The 16-year-old you see here at the center of the controversy now saying he doesn't feel as though he has anything to apologize for. In hindsight, he wishes the whole thing hadn't have happened, though. If you were anywhere near a TV set this week, you definitely saw this footage. Some folks saying that this was just in reaction to a third group that was really sort of a lightning rod and sparking the controversy there. And the kids were just reacting to that third group, the Black Hebrew Israelites, who can be extremely inflammatory. What do we think? There was a mention of you in the paper on Friday morning. I want to give you the chance to respond.
Yeah, so I think, you know, when I look back on it, what I realize now is that you can't have an opinion anymore without it being conflated with politics, that everything is about politics. Now, the media has made a mess of it. My opinion, and I still feel this way, is as a woman who values my own right to make reproductive choices, I look at that and I say this was a protest. These boys, teenage boys, were sent to protest a woman's deeply personal right to make her own health care decisions, reproductive health care decisions. And so I think the real question is, why didn't the adults prepare them for that? They were going to protest with a group that is known for their protests. They do it here 4 times a year, and on every Saturday, they're affiliate groups. It costs our city more money than any group in this activity, both sides protesting, costs our city more money than any protest groups ever. And so why weren't they prepared for the fact that they were going to be protesting, and in this era that we're all living in, you're opening yourself up to that.
Were these boys put in an unfair situation by their adults, whether that's chaperones or parents or anything?
I completely disagree. I mean, I'm a pro-life Catholic, and I know many people who go up to D.C. to pray peacefully. And I think that the way...
but this was going to be a march. This was going to be a rally.
It's to protest Roe v. Wade, right?
Yeah.
It's to show that, I mean, Julie, you call it a woman's reproductive rights, and I call it the destruction of human life. So I believe that these boys, these children, have the right to go up and pray peacefully and to demonstrate against Roe v. Wade in a way that they will not have to be on the defensive and feel like they are up for an attack.
I agree with anybody's right to protest. I mean, that is our constitutional right, but you have to realize if you're going to protest, that you're going to open yourself up to what happened. And you know, and so people can stand up for their rights. I absolutely believe in a person's right to have an opinion on reproductive rights. But how you do that, if I don't believe in something, and John believes in it, I don't go get in his way and tell him he can't do that and shame him and call him names.
So are you saying they were opening themselves up and they should be expected to be what happened to them in the media? You think they should, by being there, they should have been ready for what the media did to them?
I think, I don't know about the media. I can't speak. I don't really think anybody can speak for the media.
I want to speak for the media. What are you talking about? No, I think there's a point to be made, though. Should you put it, whether it's a protest of any sort, you know when there's a protest on National Mall, it can get pretty wily. And to put any teenagers in that situation, I think, regardless of the issue, it could be a difficult environment for any teenager. But
I'd like to chime in on that too. I mean, what you've got, the whole segment there, I've looked at 5 different videos showing the total incident, okay, where you mentioned first the third party. My understanding from what I've looked at and what I've talked to other people about is that, what is it, Nathan Phillip?
Yeah. He Native American elder.
Right. He walked and approached the men, the young Catholic men, because the other 2 groups were getting too close.
Yeah.
That is a peace drum.
Yeah.
So, you know, the whole story is he was approaching to separate the 2 other parties to keep peace. And so, you know, yes, it's a protest. There are avenues and areas that you should remain peaceful, but let's look at the whole story.
One final thought I had on this is, because I certainly don't know anybody's heart, whether it's the teenagers, whether it's the Native American elder, or even the Black Hebrew Israelites. One thing that did come, when I watched that video time and time again, I don't know the cultural sort of background of everybody, but just a respect for elders that I feel like was not exhibited.
Yeah.
And I know my mother, Mama Thompson, would have smacked me upside the head.
That was my first reaction.
If I had talked to anybody of that age or looked at them that way, my parents would have been like.
And that's what I said, is that if you're going to go up to respect life, then respect all life. And I didn't feel that that was respectful. I'm getting sort of pulled into the media discussion that, oh, they were called racist. I didn't call them anything. I'm just saying that you should respect all people. And I just don't think they were prepared for that.
All right, more Flashpoint after this.